Katanas are the GOAT. Not only do they have some of the best unique weapons in the game, but there is also some very versatile standard weapons as well. Today we're going to go through all 8 katanas, rank them from worst to best, and talk a little about them. Let's go. Katanas are my favorite weapon type in the game, as you may have guessed by practically most of my builds, including some katana to some degree, but I really like just the feel of the katanas and the movesets, and I don't think any katana on this list is inherently bad, but there are some clearly better katanas than some of the other ones. So let me know in the comments how you would rank these 8 katanas and what you think I have ranked wrong, all that good stuff, and we'll get into the first one, which is the Dragon Scale Blade. The Dragon Scale Blade scales primarily with dexterity with a little bit into strength as well. This weapon has the standard attack moveset for the katana. It is a short katana. It does not have any initial build-up like blood loss or frost, any of that good stuff, and it does have a high attack rating, which is a positive for the weapon as a whole. However, the issue is its weapon skill is
a bit shit.
Ice Lightning does sound like it could be good, but as you get further into the game, it's not as good as it seems. Now, this gives you 130 lightning damage, just flat damage on top of the weapon, and it only lasts 20 seconds. You also do get 80 frost buildup just from using this attack. So essentially what this means is that you have to activate this weapon skill every 20 seconds to get that flat lightning bonus as well as the frost buildup. Otherwise, this weapon is pretty average outside of that. Now, it does deal extra damage to dragon type enemies, but because it's a slash weapon, they usually have good resistance to slash, so that struggles a little bit there. But ultimately, all the other katanas have a passive buildup, whether it be blood loss or poison or what have you. They all have that just inherently in the weapon, and some of them you can even change that, right? Whereas this doesn't have it, and in order to actually just have a passive buildup, you're gonna have to use that Ice Lightning Sword weapon skill. And the flat 130 damage would be heaps. Like in your first playthrough, if you went like picked up this weapon, 130 damage just like flat across the board sounds great. But the further you get into New Game Plus and the further you get into the game, 130 damage that doesn't scale with anything, just that flat 130 becomes less and less powerful. So it really struggles in that regard. Now, you could combine this with a cold Uchi Katana and have like a frost build using this weapon and the Ice Lightning Sword. It's definitely viable in that regard. It's just not the best. Moving on to the Meteoric Ore Blade. This scales primarily with strength and intelligence with a little bit of dex as well, but mostly with strength. Now, this is a physical and magic damage weapon with the Gravitas weapon skill. It is the heaviest katana in the game, I believe. It has blood loss build up straight into it, and it has the highest attack rating of all of the katanas when you tally up its overall attack rating. It is also the shortest katana, so it's the heaviest, it's the shortest, it has the highest attack range, it's got blood loss build up, but it's in a weird spot.
Being bullied isn't fun.
Now, it does have the unique heavy attack where you do that like downward slash. It does heaps of poise damage. It's actually really strong as a heavy attack, and it would be really valuable, except other things in this weapon just make it really odd. I like that his strength primarily scaling with intelligence, because you could make like some kind of strength and intelligence build out of that with the physical and magic damage and all that stuff. The weapon skill Gravitas, we've talked about them in previous videos. I just don't like the gravity weapon skills. Pulling things in towards you, yeah, I just don't see the value in it really. And the AoE effect of it, maybe it does a little bit of damage. It's not the worst Ash of War ever, but I just feel like there's so many better options. And being the heaviest katana, also being the shortest katana, but it does have that blood loss build up and it does have a high attack rating. But, you know, it's in a weird spot. I consider putting this lower on the list, but because it has that passive blood loss buildup in it, I thought maybe, well, we'll bump this to that second last tier. But then also, you know, there are even a better physical and magic damage weapon on this list as well. So that's why it fits in that slot. Next is the Serpent Bone Blade. This is a strength and dex scaling weapon. It is the second highest physical damage behind the hand of Malena. Its weapon will deal poison damage with this poison native buildup it does do. The weapon skill Double Slash will like have that kind of slash animations the same as the Rivers of Blood Corpse Piler, except it just doesn't have that massive blood wave that it does do. Now, this will also have a unique R2 like slashing attack, which is really cool. I like this R2 that it does, like the little slash that it does. The poison buildup on this will deal like additional poison damage. It's like heavy poison or whatever it's called, that will deal double the amount of damage, and it also lasts a little bit less time. Really valuable weapon to use. A weird thing about this weapon is that it uses regular smithing stones to upgrade rather than the somber smithing stones, which is kind of strange because it is a unique weapon, but you know, what have you, it's still pretty good. It is a lighter katana. It has lots of value, and I almost used this for my poison samurai build. It was actually where that idea came from, was using this weapon, and then I found that actually using 2 uchis or an uchi and a nagakiba actually did more damage than using this weapon, even with the extra heavy poison proc that it does do. But this is a really solid weapon that you could definitely make some good builds out of this. There's lots of good valuable things going for it, especially that unique R2 and like the double slash, so you can get that poison effect off on enemies really quickly. It's a great weapon to use. Hand of Melina is next. Now this scales primarily with strength and dexterity, primarily with dexterity, and it requires a lot of dexterity in order just to be able to use. It has the highest physical damage. It's a heavy katana. It's the second longest katana, so it's extremely long. Second best dex scaling. Got a lot of good things going for it. Its main primary thing is the waterfowl dance, the weapon skill. It has the normal like default moveset and the blood loss build up that most katanas have, but the weapon skill is what really makes it stand out. Now, this weapon skill has really good poise, so you can get this off even while taking a hit, and once you usually hit an enemy, it'll knock them back, and you can do like the big like follow-up attacks with the waterfowl dance and deal heaps of damage in that way. Great way to build up blood bleed up on enemies as well. It doesn't seem to do heaps of blood build up, but because you're hitting them so much, you will eventually get that trigger. But the downside to the waterfowl dance is the long wind up time. In like a tight corridor, or even if you're just bad at the game like I am, it's very easy to get hit while you're trying to build up that wind up when you like jump in the air and like hold the sword for a second before you go do and you do the slashes. But it's still a really solid weapon, and you could two-hand this weapon, which makes it like unique compared to some of the other weapons, because you can just like two-hand it. A bit like the meteoric ore blade, which I should have mentioned before, should be two-handed and not, you know, equipped it in a dual wield set, because you get that extra strength benefit from that. But in this, you could two-hand it with like a nagakiba, because they're both extremely long weapons. You get like this cool like long weapon katana build that you can do. Really interesting setup there. Speaking of the nagakiba, it's next on our list. This is another strength and dex scaling weapon. It's basically the same damage output and profile as the uchi katana. It's just significantly longer. Its damage profile is like slightly less, but the length is kind of that difference that you get for using it. One of the huge benefits of this weapon and the uchi katana as well is that they can both be infused with Ash of War. It's absolutely brilliant that you can change this and you can make it to any kind of thing. Like in this footage, I've added like a flame variant to it, and you can do like cool effects with that, or lightning, or any other aspects you want to put on it. It's got that inherent blood loss build up on it as well. It's a great weapon for PvP. Not that I play PvP, because you can roll catch people because of the way that the length of the weapon will allow you to do that. It's long reach with the standard attack animations of the katana just make it a really powerful weapon to use, and so versatile with the Ashes of War being able to be changed, and you can spec it into either pure strength or pure dex or arcane or faith or intelligence. Whatever you want to make out of it, you can absolutely do that. Now, I thought about putting this higher on the list, but it ended up going here because it's not great to pair with some of the other katanas. It's more of a katana that you'll use by itself, or pairing it with the Hand of Melina. Now, that doesn't inherently mean it's a bad thing. It's just a different way that you would think about using this weapon. And probably if you're making some kind of like strength katana build, this is what you would use, and then put an Ash of War on it, make it heavy to scale it with strength. But it doesn't pair well with other katanas because of its extra length. You might actually hit someone just with a nagakiba. It'll like stagger them back, but then you won't hit them with like whatever the other katana that you're using if you're dual wielding, which is why I put the uchi katana a little bit higher on this list, and that's what we're going to talk about right now, is the uchi katana. Now, this is essentially exactly the same, except it's a little bit shorter. It's the starting equipment for the samurai. It starts out with the unsheath Ash of War. It can be infused. It's got the default move set. Everything about this weapon is the same. Essentially, it's just a little bit shorter. It's one of the lightest katanas in the game as well, but it's got all those same benefits as the nagakiba. And the reason I put it here is because you can combine it with any of these other katanas on this list, and you can actually hit enemies with both of them rather than like accidentally like hitting them with the one rather than the two. It just has a bit more flexibility in that regard, but it's almost exactly the same as the nagakiba. But neither of these options are bad. Like, both of these weapons are just like extremely good. It's just that when you're like making one of these lists, trying to rank them, they're gonna have to go somewhere. Next is the Rivers of Blood. Now, this weapon, even after the patch, is still really good. Like, it was nerfed in 1.06, but it's still a great damage. Just need to get really close to enemies to deal that great damage it does have. It doesn't have the same amount of range it used to. It's also not as good as in PvP, that kind of stuff, but it's still amazing. You can still buff it with Flame Get Me strength and all those talismans for the physical and fire damage and all that stuff. It has okay attack rating as a whole. It is like the 3rd highest behind the Meteoric Blade and the Moon Veil, so it's not like the highest, but it's still good. It's got that blood loss build up in it. The physical and fire damage makes it unique. The arcane scaling, it scales really well with arcane, even though I think it finishes at like D arcane scaling. It's a fantastic weapon. Corpse Piler is just great. We've all heard many things about this weapon. So we'll move on to the last weapon on this list, and that is the Moon Veil Katana. My favorite weapon in Elden Ring, and the first weapon that I finished the game with, is the Moon Veil Katana. This weapon scales with strength, dexterity, but primarily with intelligence. Now, it has physical and fire damage, same as the Meteoric Blade, the blood loss buildup. It has like the general like average reach, you know, it's not like a really long weapon or anything. It's pretty standard in terms of its length, same as the Rivers of Blood, but it does have great magic scaling, and it's much better to pair with like a Spellblade build or some kind of magic samurai build because of its Ash of War and its general like magic damage that it does do. Transient Moonlight, the Ash of War, is like god tier even after it was nerfed in the initial patch. I think like 1.1 or 1.2 it was like nerfed, but it's still fantastic. Now with the vertical slice, you do great poise damage, so you can easily knock enemies down for critical hits. You've got the AoE kind of version of it with the horizontal slice with the light attacks that you can do. It's a fantastic weapon just overall, and it's my favorite weapon in the game, I think, still to this date. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of this list, what you would change, chop and change, that kind of stuff. Thank you for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is NorZZa, and I hope you have a great day.